Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are listening from. This is the last word on rugby. We are almost there. It's no longer singing. We're halfway there, and some teams are living on a prayer. We are almost there with the quarterfinals of the United Rugby Championship. Three South African teams in prime position. Well, the Lions are still living on a prayer, and they are hoping some results go their way, and they also pick up 10 maximum points from the last two games. But firstly, guys, let me greet you. Good morning. It's nice to have you guys again. We are going off with the Sharks, who selected their strongest side. I'm happy to see Lorenzo Julius back in the number 13 jersey. Mikey, are some interesting changes at the Sharks. Some stuff that you've called for. Siamasuku finally there. Just your thoughts on what the Sharks can produce this weekend.
Yes, so look, by hook or by crook, um, the changes that have come in the backline are kind of the ones I would have liked to have seen. Look on the Sharks' team announcement press release, they have Jordan Hendricks are down as injured and Lucanio down as injured. So that's the 10 and the 13 obviously down, which brings in Sia Masuku at 10 and Lorenzo Julius at 13. And I think those are selections that possibly should have been made anyway. So look, I mean, I'm a great Lucanio fan. I really like the way he plays, the nuances he's got, but I think the
Yeah,
Sharks at this stage really need some jet propulsion out there
yeah,
in the outside
exactly.
channels, and they really need to get their backline game going. I think Lorenzo can do that for them, and really the 10 change, I think, really should have happened. I don't care if they say Jordan's injured or not. Masuku needed to come in anyway, and that's
Mm.
exciting for me. Look, I mean, this is the guy who arguably won the Sharks the Challenge Cup last year
Challenge
against
Cup.
Gloucester.
Yeah,
He was the man of the match in that game. I
yeah.
mean, he could do no wrong. And then suddenly he just found himself on the outer,
I'm out.
and I'm not
Yeah.
sure why. I'm not sure. It's possibly because the Sharks bought Jordan Hendrickson, and then they felt they had to justify their purchase, and
Mm.
but Sia went from the golden boy to like completely out of the picture. So
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to see him at 10. Because we all know that the Sharks forwards have been going quite well. Or not quite well, they've been going extremely well. But there's just been that something, a disjoint, if you want to call it something, has been going wrong between the forwards, who are world class,
Superb.
and the Springbok backline, which is also world class, but yet it's not coming together. And
Mm.
and then you have to look at your game drivers 9 and 10. Um, Jaden hasn't been playing at his best, but you know what? His second half against Ulster was much better than his first half. So hopefully he's turned the corner. Jordan's injured. Sia Masuku's in. Lorenzo is going to provide that jet propulsion at 13. I think the Sharks backline is looking much better balanced, much more exciting. And I
Yeah.
really hope now against the Ospreys on Friday night, that forward power and that star-studded backline, it all comes together.
Mm.
And yeah, they just move to the level that they need to. If they want to like, really go far into the URC playoffs, they need to now get that cohesion. And I'm just glad to see Siamasuku there and yeah, Lorenzo at 13.
Yeah. Hopefully, no more burglaries for the Sharks. They need to put games to bed. Because as things stand, they still good for that fourth spot on the log. The Sharks and Stormers, if we can jump to that, the Sharks and Stormers are on a collision course as things are looking at the moment. Do you feel the SA team versus the SA team quarterfinal is will it be good for the URC, or would you prefer to have them play each other like in a semi and or again in a final?
Yeah, I would prefer that, Leighton, because I don't want our teams to knock each other out
Yeah.
in the first round of the playoffs, essentially, So, um, preferably a semi-final and, of course, a final. That would be great because that's closer to getting to the trophy. So you want as many South African teams as possible into that semi-final because, and also in terms of the travel for the semi-final, if you can
Yeah.
avoid having to go overseas, that is first prize. Even if you're playing at Loftus or Cape Town Stadium or Kings Park. Just avoiding that overseas flight, that is number one, for anybody. So if they can avoid each other, that would be great. But you know, um, the Sharks, they've shown they can win away from home. Yes, it wasn't pretty. So if they are required to go overseas for the semi-final, I think they definitely got the squad, as we've said before. They've got the squad to do it, and this is the time to produce the goods.
And then just moving on, Asher. I mean, quite an important duel at Loftus on Saturday. The Bulls still hunting that second place. I mean, if Leinster can lose a couple more, they can even hunt for that top spot on the log. But just it's been a tricky. Loftus has been a tricky place where they fired at their absolute best, but then trying to make it what 3 wins in a row over the Stormers. They kind of lost their way in a wet game. I must add that in a wet game. Penalty count in that game racked up against them. So it's just that small inaccuracies sometimes that comes to bite them. What must they do to really get past a good Cardiff side who will be desperate because they are still in the running to place in the top five, top six if they can win at least one of their South African games.
Yeah, the Bulls always try and say it's Fortress Loftus, but we all
Yeah.
are sure of that's not the case this season. Particularly that Northampton game in the Champions Cup
Yeah.
stands out as the big one. That's the game that they needed to win. Of course, we've seen Northampton great success now into the Champions Cup
Mm.
final, so that is a bit of context here. But still, just the Bulls haven't been great guns at home this season. In fact, they've won more games away than they have in any previous season in this campaign, across Champions Cup
Yeah.
and the URC. So, I mean, and they ended off their tour now, their 4-week tour, by beating Munster and Glasgow in Limerick and Scotland, respectively. So, those are great wins, and it shows that when the going gets tough, the Bulls can really hang in there, particularly
Mm.
defensively. They showed, a real grit and determination, and also credit to their systems. For the past season or two, there's been question marks around the defense, but it seems like this time it's not only in terms of the system, but also just the fighting spirit of the guys to really, make tackle after tackle, just get up again and again. I mean, Marcel Coetzee made 32 tackles in the one game, and Cameron Hanekom 23 in the same game, and Cameron was saying, "Oh, I need to get to 30." That's
Yeah.
sort of the mindset that
That's good. Yeah.
but I think they'll enjoy coming back to Loftus and just to sort of almost put that bogey aside of losing a couple of games because now, it's crunch time. They have to beat Cardiff with a bonus point to really push for that second spot on the log with Glasgow also facing two difficult away games in their last two against Benetton in Italy and then Leinster in Dublin. So, it's a real opportunity for the Bulls to push for that second spot at least, and they've got to play the sort of natural game. Sometimes I just feel that the pressure of playing at Loftus, they want to put on a show for the home crowd, and then it just sometimes get a bit carried away with it instead of
Mm.
just sticking to what they need to do, and going through their phases, putting phase play together like 20 phases, just hold on to the ball. Sometimes they just get a bit too overexcited, and then there's a knock on in the 22. I mean, just chatting with the Bulls this week, Marco van Staden was saying that the finishing is really something they identified as an issue from the tour. Despite having won so many games on tour, they feel they get into the red zone and then don't put points on the board. So also in that regard, if you need to take a 3-pointer just to get the confidence going, then take the kick at poles, and
Yeah.
that just gives the guys a bit of confidence and makes him feel okay. We got some reward for our efforts. So if the Bulls can just put that together and not try and push it too hard in terms of ball in hand when they're in the strike zone. Sometimes you go for the glory and all the just
Yeah,
play the extra plays, play two more phases if you need to. The hard yards, do that hard yards because Cardiff, we know they're a team, they don't go away. They're still in the running for the playoffs. They've beaten Munster as well just a few weeks ago. So they are a really competitive team this season. So it won't be a easy kind of afternoon for the Bulls.
yeah, and speaking of those small inaccuracies, that's been something I don't think it's just towards the Bulls that's been happening. It's across the board with the South African teams, and especially at home, you need to take those opportunities, whether it comes in 3 points or for argument's sake, Stormers against Connacht a couple of weeks ago, scrum under the poles, it's 3 points, but they decided to scrum, lost the scrum. So it's those small things that sometimes the South African team still get wrong, especially when it comes to crunch games. And we would really like to see them close out these things so that they don't have to be under pressure when it comes to minute 71, 72, and this team suddenly gets fired up because they know there's still something that they're playing for, and they've got nothing to lose because they're playing away from home. If they bomb out, they gave it a shot. If they win it. Almost like Connacht did there in those final
Yeah,
minutes.
and also the other worry for me is often after a bye week,
Yeah,
the South
that
African
that
teams
was
need to sort of take a while to find their feet, and they can't afford that at this stage of the season. Yes, I think the Bulls absolutely needed that break, probably more than most of the
yeah,
teams after four
most
weeks on
definitely.
tour, and Marco van Staden again just speaking about spending time with family again, after such a long time away, and just recharging the batteries a bit before the final few weeks of the tournament. So now it's all systems go. You can't ease yourself into the game and just uh, dish out a few jabs and see what's coming. You've got to land that sort of knockout punch already in that first 20 minutes, and if the Bulls can get on top there, I think then they can end that Cardiff challenge. Although Cardiff keeps going right into the end, but if you get 2 3 quick tries, it will just
Mm,
knock the wind out of their sails. But especially at altitude, because we know that burn comes after like the 20 25
yeah.
minute mark. That's when the visiting teams really feel it a bit, the lack of air and stuff like that. So, yeah, let's see if the Bulls can hit steps immediately. And it will also be interesting to see the kind of team that Jake White goes for.
Mm,
Because, yes, you would think at this stage of the season, he's got his best 15 and best 23, that he knows who they are at this stage.
mm.
But, sometimes over the years, the Bulls have also lost some key players like in a quarterfinal just before the playoffs, and they need to avoid that as well. But at the same time, they can't afford to slip up if they want to end second. So yeah, I think a bit of mix and match again, like he did on tour. I
Yeah.
think the Bulls have the depth to field a really competitive team, even if it's not the absolute first choice player in each position. They've got enough cover there and enough depth to really give it to Cardiff.
Yeah, I feel that's where Jake has hit the nail on the head in terms of mixing and matching and having that player depth to do that, to be successful while changing most of the games. Talking about mixing and matching is gonna be a bit of I wanted to say younger look to the Stormers, especially in the pack. With them losing some experience, the props, Neethling Forshey still out suspended, Brok Harris retired due to his knee injury, Frans Malherbe still sitting with a very bad injury that could stop him from competing in the URC for the rest of the season. And then also possibly a change that fly off with Mani Libbok being back to full fitness. He could get the odd 35, 40 minutes. Just on the Stormers, they will be mixing and matching. I feel it's the Dragons, it's bottom of the log dwellers, and they can possibly do that. But you just spoke about that getting back to running after a bye week, so that's going to be tricky for them to balance that with the changes that we are expecting.
Yeah, that will be a tricky thing, but I would start Mani. I think that's
Yeah,
sort of the best way
100%.
because often coaches also say you don't want to bring an injured player off the bench because what if there's an injury in the first 5 minutes and the guy can only play half an hour, 35, and
Yeah,
then you've got a huge problem. So I think, and also the kind of player Mani is, I think he's better suited to starting than coming on. He sort of sets a tone for the Stormers team.
yeah,
Yes, he's been out for
yes.
for a really long time now, but we know his skill set, we know his quality, and he knows the players around him and how to get the best out of them. So I think Mane can start there and really put his foot down in terms of getting that backline going, and hopefully those young forwards, if some of the big guns are rested there, can set that front football for the halfbacks to really flourish because Dragons, yes, they bottom of the log. I think they've only like won one game this whole season, but they also, typical Welsh side, they will get stuck in at least for the first half. It won't be sort of just a run through them kind of scenario.
Yeah,
They're still going to give it their all and try and slow the Stormers ball down because that's, I think, the main way to stop the Stormers from playing is to really hit those breakdowns hard. And the Welsh, just generally speaking, the Welsh teams are really strong at the breakdown. They put numbers in there and try and make it messy and spoil it, and that's what the Stormers pack is going to have to deal with. But if they can, then Mane is certainly the guy who can really put on a show there. But it will be interesting to see, particularly with the set pieces as well. I'm not sure if,
yeah,
if, if Salman Murat and Ruben van Heerden should also get a break perhaps at this stage before the last few games.
mm,
So there could be someone like Connor Evans coming in at lock there, and it will be a nice test for him as well if he gets an opportunity to show that he can run the lineouts as well.
yeah, yeah. Even if Connor plays, Connor can play for lock. There's JD Schickeling who's been coming off the bench. I think it's also time for him to get back to running in the starting lineup. So that he can build up some momentum. I know that lock pairing of Ruben and Salman has been excellent. I mean, physically in the line out, stealing balls, with their carries, tackling. It's been good to see. But JD's got ambitions too, and he's also a menace in the lineouts that the Stormers can definitely call on his prowess there to disrupt the lineouts. If I can continue on that trend with uh, prowess legends, and yes, like we're greeting Brok Harris down here in the Cape Town, Ashfaq. We've been in the same room a couple of times with him over the years. A soft-spoken legend of the Stormers game. He couldn't get that send off due to that knee injury. But yes, like what a career for the big man. um, Juan Harris, for those who didn't who didn't know that, everyone knows him as Brok or Brocky. But yes, like what a career for the Stormers, and they're saying goodbye to him during the Dragons game, the only other team that he played for over his professional career.
Yeah, it was great to catch up with Brocky yesterday, this week at the Cape Town Stadium. We also go a long way over the years because, of course, he had two stints at the Stormers. Started out there after varsity, and then went to the Dragons, became a legend there, and now he was back at the Stormers for his second stint. And yeah, talking about Brocky being a legend in Cape Town, I also reminded him he's actually from the Northwest Province, and he then quietly said to me, "Yes, Kruger's Dorp." So that's not just something he wants to say out loud. There, he's now a fully fledged Cape Townian,
Yes,
loves
yes.
Western Province and the Stormers, and he will continue now in the coaching structures. Initially as a scrum coach now as well. So yeah, what a legend, much maligned at times in his first stint, because he wasn't sort of a Springbok kind of tight head. He
Mm,
wasn't
mm,
dominating guys, but he almost never went back. Brock
yeah,
was such a reliable guy. He may not have won hundreds of penalties like a Walker Low, but he's very seldom went back. You could rely on him to just secure the Stormers ball, handle whatever Lou said standing in front of him. And actually, I feel in the second stint, in many respects, he played even better because I felt his work rate, particularly in defence, he really got stuck in
Yeah,
the second time round now at the Stormers, and obviously that was helped with his few years at the Dragons in Wales, where because of the conditions, the tight forwards really need to help out the loose trio and the locks defensively because the fields are just so heavy and just the climate there and the weather conditions. So it wasn't the South African environment of free flowing rugby and nice weather. So yeah, those skills definitely developed for Brock, and I think he made a really fine contribution the second time around at the Stormers. Yeah, but about the knee injury, in fact, he mentioned
mm,
he hardly got injured over his entire career.
yeah,
I think he had one major injury previously, and just a few minor niggles here and there, and typical stuff for props like ankles. But
yeah.
yeah, now he has to be forced out with this major knee injury. So yeah, real pity. But yeah, I think he will get a wonderful round of applause to this weekend at the Cape Town Stadium because also it's the Dragons, his other big team. So yeah, a great occasion for him.
Yeah, just one more thing about him. I remember it was this season where the Lions were absolutely on the rampage down here in Cape Town. They were breaking away down the touchline. Um, Edwin van der Merwe was almost gone. And you see a prop making a chase there and getting the tackle. And then eventually it was Sasha who bundled Franco Horn out in the left-hand touchline. So it just shows that if he had picked up any knee injuries prior to his career, wouldn't have been able to chase down a winger down the touchline. So yes, kudos to Brock for a stellar career, and yes, like we wish him well in his coaching there by the Stormers. He's been player coach, and lots of the young guys, Vernon Matongo, Sazi Sunday, who's playing this weekend, will be under his tutelage. So they are in good hands. Just finally, guys, the Lions are, we don't have to say too much about them. It's hope for something from other teams and then just focusing on getting 5 points this weekend. If they do not get 5 points, Mike, maybe you can chip in here. If they do not get 5 points, it's time out. It's let's reset for the season.
Yeah, look, the Lions to have any hope, they've got to get around. Well, they can only get 45 points. That's like if they get 10, points from their last two games, they'll get to 45. And as we have seen over the last couple of seasons of the URC, 45 is not enough. So yeah, look, I mean, really, it's a little bit of a lost cause. I saw quite an interesting article where artificial intelligence actually put all the numbers in, and they said the Lions have a 12.5% chance of making the playoffs if they get 10 points from their last two games. So, yeah, well, it's possible, but it's unlikely. Look, all they can do, obviously, is just to go out and really deliver. Yeah, look, they did it last week, and we said it was too little, too late. But yeah, they've just got to keep on going. They're playing for pride. They're playing for their coach, apparently. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I wonder if a better result would be for them to get beaten in these last couple of games, so then they have a real shake-up at Ellis Park. And I'm being a little bit of a devil's advocate here, and
Yeah.
and look, I like Ivan van Rooyen, I really do. He comes across as a really, but they just seem to have got used to mediocrity, the Lions, and I think that's their big issue. I mean, this is the fourth consecutive season that they're not going to make the top eight.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough. Look, I understand, they have some constraints. They don't have the resources of other teams. And Ashraf, you pointed that out quite succinctly in previous episodes of the show. Absolutely, they don't have the same resources. But still, with what they've got, they should be doing better. So something's got to change, in my opinion. something's got to give because the Lions aren't performing where they should be.
Asher, final words there. Should I say last word on the Lions there?
Yeah, I hope for a miracle, Mike. I hope the results go away and
12.5%.
12.5% is better
That's
than
that's
0%, Mike.
yeah, that's 12.5 could be a pass rate here in South Africa. Just remember that.
Naughty, naughty Leiden. But yeah, it's just because they've come so near and yet so far for so many years
Hmm.
now, and
Yeah,
um, they try and make the most of what they have. As we know, they don't have the big names of the other teams and Springboks and all those kind of things. And they lose games they should win, and they win games they should lose. That has sort of been their bugbear
that's the
over these
story. Yeah.
last few years. So let's hope that this time around actually things go their way and they get those results from the other teams and they get 5 log points in the last 2 games, each one, bonus point wins in both, and get those 10 log points and then make the top eight. Why not? It can happen. And once you're in the top eight, guys, I always refer to our great swimmer Tatiana Schoenmaker, or now Tatiana Smith, who always says, if you have a lane, you have a chance. So if you in the top eight, you in a quarterfinal, whether it's home or away. I mean, obviously, if you're eighth, then it's away, but you still in the mix, and then
Yeah.
anything can happen on the day. So yeah, go Lions, go Lions.
I love the optimism there for the Lions, Asher. That was another episode of The Last Word on Rugby. We will be back next week. We are going to say cheers to the Stormers, cheers to the Bulls, cheers to the Sharks, and then we will shoot up another prayer for the Lions, hopefully. Guys, thanks
Yes,
for joining me again. If you haven't yet, click that likes button, subscribe to our channel, and we'll get you some more news on the URC as we approach the quarterfinals. It's getting tight up top on the URC log. Thanks for joining me
yes,
again, guys. Cheers.
yes.